NRM boards, local councils and others to actually secure the legacy of the program into the future, so that within the region, Indigenous people's contribution to looking after lands and waters becomes part of the everyday. It's resourced, it's recognised, it's prioritised. It's not just an add-on. I guess that was one of the key priorities that was being addressed. Similar group of authors here. Rick Hartman's added to that. He's the present coordinator of the Yalawarui program, which is responsible for Ngarrindjeri work on lands, waters, cultural heritage, all go together in that space. Yep, leave it at that. There's also, just add, within the partners in this work is Gorda Research. The Gorda Institute for Water Research has funded components of the work, and also the Ngarrindjeri are partners on several ARC projects that have supported some of the work that's gone into this, I guess, 5-6 year project. We've done the acknowledgements. I'll just add that that's the Ngarrindjeri flag up on the right-hand side, and that's the logo for the Ngarrindjeri Regional Authority, which is the peak body for the Ngarrindjeri Nation at the moment. So, in 2009, when this project, the Ngarrindjeri Partnerships project, was being conceived, Ngarrindjeri were being negotiated with by the government as stakeholders, and where things were heading was that the money that was coming from the federal government, several multi-million-dollar programs, Ngarrindjeri might have been consulted on those projects, but not really funded to actually engage. Also, just come out of a period of conflict over the Hindmarsh Island Bridge development and other issues, and what was being projected was even more intervention in the local region and issues that could lead to conflict over cultural heritage and other issues. So this whole strategy was a way of alleviating, not going into a conflict-based space, not going into a space in the newspapers, but finding a way to build capacity long-term for the Indigenous nation in the region to avoid that kind of outcome where possible, I guess. So an agreement was negotiated, a contract law agreement with the whole of the government, state of South Australia, which recognises Ngarrindjeri people's responsibility as traditional owners. It's not an MOU, it's a formal agreement. And more recently there's been an agreement called Speaking as Country Agreement. So the first one was listen to Ngarrindjeri people talking. The second one is actually recognise that Ngarrindjeri people are speaking as country.
Could I just add something to that? To the 2009 Kungan Ngarrindjeri Yanan Agreement was signed off by 4 ministers, Minister for Aboriginal Affairs and Reconciliation, Minister for Water and the River Murray, Sustainability, Environment and Conservation, and
primary industries.
Yeah, primary industries, agriculture, forestry and fishery. So,
yep.
Yeah.
What's that? So what was being attempted to achieve was a new relationship, a new partnership, and the possibilities for healthy engagements to occur. So the idea was to try to start to create healthy programs and healthy flows. So if Ngarrindjeri engaging with a big program, how could that program actually add health to Ngarrindjeri and subsequently add health to the region? So projects and engagements that build Ngarrindjeri capacity to care for, speak as country, projects that respect Ngarrindjeri knowledge, projects, engagements that bring energy into Ngarrindjeri lives, programs and plans. I guess that the assessment that was being talked about just before is talking about the social outcomes of these sorts of projects. So this was the objectives of the program, the Ngarrindjeri Partnerships Project as it was called, CLIM project, was to facilitate and work in partnership, to protect Ngarrindjeri's unique relationship to the region, the country, enable Ngarrindjeri to have a major role in the process of developing a resilient and healthy lands and waters, and to build capacity, both professional and culturally appropriate Ngarrindjeri capacity to engage meaningfully in the space. So they were funded to the extent of multi-millions of dollars over a number of years to try to address building those programs. And it's a little excerpt from the KNYA agreement to give you an idea of the kinds of things that are committed to by the ministers of South Australia on your behalf. If you're South Australians, you would have all known that this was done, I suppose, well known. But recognises that Ngarrindjeri consider protection and maintenance of culture and cultural sites upon land and waters central in every aspect to Ngarrindjeri community wellbeing and existence. So the agreement was put in place, a task force was put in place to meet regularly every month to talk about projects and issues on Ngarrindjeri country. There's a leaders-to-leaders meeting between Ngarrindjeri leaders and state government leaders, ministers and others regularly. And this is the kind of thing that elders were trying to achieve at this point. Call Tom's words there. Governments come and go, but we in Ngarrindjeri, and we will always be here because this is where we live. KNYA agreement is written in black and white on paper, so it will outlast changes in government. So Ngarrindjeri didn't want to just go around in the cycle of new people, new approaches, new policies. Let's set something in place that can't be changed and build from there. So the KNYA Taskforce long-term strategy, it has a strategic implementation plan now, and it's hoped that it will continue on into the future as a regional mechanism for Indigenous engagement, not just a short-term fix. As I say, it has leaders-to-leaders meetings. We've set up working groups on a range of issues, members from Ngarrindjeri and members from different government organisations and departments to address and develop different things. Statement of commitments actually articulate the principles in the KNYA agreement and allow for those promises in the agreement to actually operate in projects and programs. So it's been achieved, is across the whole of the CLIM programs in the region. The innovations that have been developed in the Ngarrindjeri Partnerships project have been used across that space, so that there's opportunities to engage in all of the programs, from ground truthing to soil testing to revegetation. The kind of capacity that's been developed and the processes and protocols, Ngarrindjeri being heavily involved in water planning, Ramsar ecological character description, have secured an environmental water allocation from the federal government, have nurseries, multiple nurseries involved in re-veg programs, developed a water planning SOC, Statement of Commitment, with the government, and a formal cultural knowledge agreement. Have created a critical part of this program was to develop an economic arm so that Ngarrindjeri would create employment and training as the program developed, which is really contracting. And there's been a number of people who've achieved significant training outcomes, and there are projects and programs. There's a labour hire agreement with Thornton and Hogan, which is creating some significant financial opportunities and business opportunities for Ngarrindjeri employment. It's also developing Ngarrindjeri capacity towards co-management in the region. So there's the handback of the Coorong National Park is still on the table, and I guess this whole project is like co-management of the region, really. South Australian Government's also introduced an Aboriginal Regional Authorities policy now, which is now formally in place, and this program in a way has helped to provide some inspiration to that possible change in direction.
Can I just add a couple of things
Yep.
there, Steve? Steve reflected on the Fulton Hogan contracting opportunity. So the CLIM Recovery Project has got a major revegetation program. I'm not sure most of the people in Doona would be aware of that. It's been promoted pretty well. That's significantly invested. Ngarrindjeri have got 3 nurseries that have been producing between 70 and 100,000 plants for that. It's touted as the largest revegetation program in the Southern Hemisphere, but that capacity that the CLIM program and that Commonwealth investment has created has gone on to the Rui contracting so far, securing 15 long-term traineeships with Fulton Hogan. Really good opportunities for people, and it demonstrates the longer-term outcomes of that investment.
Yep. And if Luke Trevorrow was here to help present, he'd be focusing on those elements because he's the business manager at the moment, as well as playing a big role in the heritage programs. 2014, a new kind of agreement was signed with the government called Speaking as Country Deed. It's got 2 kinds of fundamental objectives. It was signed in relation to the dredging at the Murray Mouth. Well, Ngarrindjeri were arguing that dredging at the Murray Mouth is still culturally inappropriate. It's not a support for that kind of strategy, but there's a key need for understanding what that area means to Ngarrindjeri people. It's a registered area. The meeting of the waters site after the Hindmarsh Island issue, it's now actually a registered cultural area. All of the waters around Hindmarsh Island are registered as culturally significant under the Aboriginal Heritage Act. And this Speaking as Country Deed, in a way, is committing the government and Ngarrindjeri to work together to try to explain better what that means, and to work out how to bring the values and the principles that are embedded in that place into local management, local planning, local operations. It also commits the Ngarrindjeri to work with government to secure more water for the river. So that's a key part of that agreement. But it does recognise that Ngarrindjeri people speak as country, which is a big shift in understanding. And if people are speaking as country, if country's not healthy, and if people are developing ecological character descriptions about those people, it just brings home how important it is for Indigenous people to be right in the middle of that space, because you're talking about people's body and people's spirit. Might move past that one. We're really close to the end.
Yeah, 1 minute.
So this is just a quote from those leaders who are involved in these programs and setting them up at the very beginning. These are the kinds of questions that elders have been asking around South Australia for forever. And I guess the Yalawarui program that's been set up, the Ngarrindjeri Partnerships Project and the KNYA Agreement are trying to achieve that sort of restoration of well-being to Yalawarui, which means the lands, the waters, the people. And to answer this kind of question, so there was a promise that was made to Aboriginal people in South Australia that actually their lands and waters wouldn't be alienated, according to the original letters patent. That was broken, and bad things have occurred ever since. And what can be done to actually fix that up? And I guess natural resource management, water management is a key area where those kinds of issues have to be taken into account.
I've got one more point.
Yep.
So all this work's been going on for the last 5 years quite intensively. Obviously the Ngarrindjeri Yalawarui concept has been, it's been around for a long time, but this project last year won the Australian River Prize, so it's a quite a prestigious thing. I think it was the Lake Eyre Basin Partnership won it the year before, and last year they won the International River Prize. NRA, Ngarrindjeri Yalawarui program, are finalists in the International River Prize this year. So.
And that's on the basis of the collaboration with Duna and other parties on this kind of co-management, I guess, of a river wetland system. Next.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Any questions for Steve on this one?
I'll get some water.
Roll. Yep.
Just a quick one. We all know that key funding is coming towards the end.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering whether, Steve, you could give us a bit of a snapshot of where to from here,
Yep.
because you wouldn't want to see the wonderful work that you've achieved today coming unstuck. So I guess you've got planning. Are you able to?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, and I guess that CLIM project's objectives from the federal government's perspective was that they were funding the state and Ngarrindjeri to work together to create a legacy. So take federal funding, now it should be state funding. So on one level, we're negotiating with the state around funding the Ngarrindjeri Yalawarui program directly through state government coffers. And we're looking at some commitments from NRM boards and local councils to actually support that program, because it's a capacity that actually makes the region healthier. It contributes to the region in all sorts of ways, and we've shown what it costs to actually do that kind of work and to actually be engaged in this sort of creative way. So we've identified the costs. We have been negotiating with ministers. We've developed business plans. We've also, the fact that the regional authorities are now up as an official policy means that there's likely to be some resourcing for regional authorities, which is also part of it. Cultural heritage has recently shifted too to the possibility of funding to local organisations. There's native titles not far off down the track, and there's also a significant push by Ngarrindjeri in relation to water planning and that water space, to securing resources in that space. So there's multiple opportunities, and the business that's being created. So Ngarrindjeri is starting to make money out of some of the programs that they run, so there's starting to be some money that can be used and allocated to these spaces. But it just shows you how much work you have to do and how much you have to prove the benefit of that work to actually secure some long-term change in South Australian ways of engaging with Indigenous people and Indigenous affairs. So if this doesn't work and doesn't get up as an ongoing program, then there's not a lot of hope for other programs, I would say, because this has really tried to tackle things at every level. And it is a long-term program. It's going to take another 10 years of building capacity in the Ngarrindjeri community to actually be doing this sort of work, because it's complex and busy work that everybody here would know about.
All right, great.